Welcome to NeuroNoodle's Neurofeedback and Neuropsychology Podcast, featuring tech legend Jay Gunkelman. He's the man who has read well over 500,000 brain scans, and Dr. Marie Swingle, author of iMinds. Our goal is to provide information and promote options for better mental health. The NeuroNoodle Podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.
The West Wind, Suisun City, baby.
So we reached out to Leigh Steinberg.
Wait a minute, what do we got here?
And you know, for those who might not recognize that name, Jerry Maguire is, you know, played by obviously a famous actor, but they were playing Leigh Steinberg's role.
Okay.
He's a very famous agent. I think 8 first-round draft picks for the NFL have been his people that he's repped. So he's up there in sports rep, and he's got an interesting story to tell, and we're going to give him a little bit of stage time at Suisun to share his story.
How did you swing this, Jay Gunkelman? Did your little posse?
I got fingers in everything, so I cut them off at one point and stuck them in things, and I got these back on, you know. So
Fair enough.
But anyway, when you're this old, you have a lot of connections. That's all.
As you get older, you lose the connections. Like my sciatica. Oh my God.
Well, you'd like to lose that connection, I bet. Huh? So.
Nothing a little neurofeedback can't fix. Dr. Hill, how was Monday? What was going on? What are the questions? Can we recycle any?
We talked about, I actually went over all of the things that I think get in the way of neurofeedback, ways to optimize neurofeedback, some of the important things to think about, how to get brain maps done against medication timing, when you should think about, training straight through medication for neurofeedback, when the rare times when medications can get in the way of that process, and then other behavioral factors that can erode your success at neurofeedback if you don't do it right.
Was there a wow factor moment in your Q&A? So we can have one here.
No, I don't remember. It was all of like 2 days ago. It's been, I've looked at 50 brain maps since then. I've talked to, 80 people. It's all a blur. Sorry. So
I understand how that happens. So
right. I thought you might, Jay. I was, you resemble that remark. This is what happens. You see how Jay looks? You see how I look? There's like a before and after on your screen here. If you keep looking at brains, it just, gradually turns into.
All right, let's do a little clickbait here, Dr. Hill. What was that question again?
What makes neurofeedback not work, or what gets in the way of neurofeedback?
Here goes the chat GPT in the background. I can hear it clicking now. It's not
it's
AI.
Going even when I'm not there, Jay.
It's actually PI, which is plagiarized intelligence, So, but it does give lots of answers. After I gave my talk on far-field phase reversals and the ability to see sources deeper in the brain, like the insula, I got a ChatGPT summary of far-field phase reversal, and I would give it a C-. Lots of material, kind of generally sort of halfway relevant material, but then they make some statements. Calling sequential montage bipolar phase reversals real phase reversals. There's nothing more real about them than any other phase reversal. It's just a phase reversal. If they would have said an actual cortical spike, they may have been correct. But using the term real or true in EEG is really silly because there's no ground truth in EEG. Change the montage, change filters, change anything, and everything changes. So, and then they also said the far field phase reversal could be 2 things. Number 1, a field effect. Number 2, could have a source, such as and here's their list: the thalamus, which does not make surface EEG, and number 2, the basal ganglia, which do not make surface EEG. So their answer was stupid because they didn't know that the things they were pointing at didn't really make surface EEG that you could see a phase reversal with, even a far field phase reversal. If they would have said the insula, now I'm impressed. So, but which is a deep-seated cortical source. It actually makes EEG waveforms. So that, as I say, AI gave it its best shot. That would have given it a C-. And it was an interesting display of bits and pieces of information, but it missed some foundational knowledge of the signal they were talking about, unfortunately.
Hey, Radar, welcome back. Welcome back. Bartender, set him up. Or her up, I don't remember.
I don't know. Just radar of the Ashwood. That's it.
Anthony Ramos, welcome. Are we going to do signs?
What's up? Were you guys, when I came in, were you talking about how Pete has replaced us with AI? Was that the topic?
Well, there was a discussion about some EEG stuff, and he asked for what was that, and he was about to enter something into ChatGPT to get an answer.
Oh, you stopped him.
A pithy answer.
Well, I was just commenting.
I gave it a PI instead of an AI because it's plagiarized intelligence. But also shared the anecdote of having gotten a summary of far field phase reversals right after I gave the lecture about it. Somebody at the lecture actually punched in and gave me a printout of far field phase reversals off of ChatGPT.
I was just joking because I think Pete released a podcast episode that seemed to be AI generated yesterday, if I could say that. About
it was
13
minutes.
Purposelessness among Gen Z, which wasn't interesting. It was interesting, some stuff in there. So
I've seen a couple of those AI generated ones about the brain and neurofeedback posted by people who should know better onto Reddit forums and things. And I go and watch them, like, oh, interesting. And like there's like 4 wrong statements in the first 30 seconds. And I'm like,
only?
And I go back and I say, look, it's all wrong. And then they remove it. So
I think people are forgetting that AI is just the same as when we first started using PCs and personal computers. You have to teach it the truth. It's just going to spit random things out, and it will make things up kind of like your left brain does, if it doesn't really know the truth.
Lisa Tatran's going to be doing a talk at Suisun Summit on AI interacting with EEG lab and how to make that interaction work and generate things like neurofeedback protocols and things out the other end. Anyway, it should be an interesting discussion. And but before you popped on, we mentioned Leigh Steinberg's going to be there as well. So it should be an interesting interactive meeting.
How did you swing that again, Jay?
Connections. If you get old,
all right.
Just
throwing out there.
And I'm hoping that Isabella and her mother can be there at the same time as Leigh is. So Isabella's playing pro tennis now in Europe, but she's potentially going to be flying back and forth to New Zealand because she's on the New Zealand's Billie Jean King tournament representative. They have 5 tennis players from New Zealand, and they nominated her as one of their 5. So she's going to be popping back and forth. So we're hoping to get her on the ground here in Suisun during the meeting, but it might just be virtual. We don't know whether we can get their tennis tournament timing just right for us. We'll see.
Radar says, was the script of the video AI generated? No, I put it in. Sort of. Edited. Copied. No, you get like 6,000 characters to put in what you're looking for, and it spits something out. It's definitely not perfect. You can tell what it is. But as you know, I can put something out there that can sound just like me. I don't know why people would want to listen to that, but it's getting closer and closer and closer. Just like you have the DeepSeek, the Chinese ChatGPT, you have ChatGPT itself, and then you have Grok. If you can use the three as an advisory board, have two contradict each other and have one be the judge, I think there's some value in that. I'm pretty brutal to my ChatGPT. I
Yell at it.
You
Shame it.
I swear at it, curse at it, and I'll put it up there. Grok, I know you guys love Elon, but that Grok is, whatever they did in that third version is working out pretty good. But I don't want to get you guys all fired up. Radar, I agree with the video that we rely too much on therapy. That's right, Radar.
I have a friend that when he uses ChatGPT, he does something interesting. He basically has to teach it. So for instance, in Jay's far field reversal, and I don't remember the criteria there, but you might say something my friend would do to the same question, say, ChatGPT, being that Steinbrenner and whoever said that a far field reversal differs from this reversal in this way, would it still be the case that this qualifies as a far field? And it will give you a much more accurate answer. So if you fire back and forth like that, and it's never going to be perfect, or not anytime soon, but I just wanted to throw that out because it was so interesting when I saw him doing this.
If you keep the conversations organized, like I have 3 other podcasts that I do, if you keep them all organized with all the transcripts and everything that you do, you can kind of weed some of that stuff out. It's definitely not perfect, but I do see this thing ramping up, and I'm excited to see how risk-averse people in the world will go into it and make themselves be more confident.
We're about to change the reasoning models are about to change. Up until now, everything we've had access to has been predictive. It's just completion. It's just probabilistic. Given all the inputs, what's the output? But the models are changing right now. The stuff where consumers are getting access to are starting to reflexive thinking and evaluating and doing kind of like a feedback loop with a defined output. It's working very well on things like math and programming, because you can define what success is and train it in consideration of its answer, correct itself, send other versions of itself out to gather data, come back and get the answer, and then finally give you the answer in a way that's much more like a chain of thought and much less like a predictive algorithm for text. So we're transitioning into that mode now, and I think the uncanny valley is already getting a little bit near. I think we're about to be in the middle of it pretty soon, where it's going to be hard to tell what's going on. So
it's going to be an AIJ.
An interesting comment here about free therapy not really being something that worked out well. I've found that offering free therapy is not a good thing, because then it's worthless. And if you actually charge some nominal amount, it actually has some value at that point. So, $50 a session or $25 a session isn't enough to cover the session, really, but it's enough to get somebody who can't afford a session to put some value in it and still attend. And I would think that a study that set up free therapy is setting itself up for failure, because there's no value in something that's free.
Medicare, Medicaid, there's no value in any of that?
That's not free.
Yeah, it
is. So the study he's talking about, we've talked about it before, and I pulled it up. It's called the Myriad Study. And it's an acronym for something. And they compared mindfulness and social emotional intelligence intervention with a control group. And they didn't find everybody got worse. Basically, they found it was no better than the control, and some of the kids got worse. And what I think I may have read is those kids may have had a predisposition to certain mental disorders. But what I was going to say is, I think there's still room for somebody to do something like what Jay has done in neurofeedback, which is create match certain types of meditation to certain EEG phenotypes or maybe some other biomarker, so that, crude example would be if somebody has one of Jay's phenotypes, let's say it's like frontal slow waves, and let's say, for sake of argument, there's a meditation that increases frontal slow waves, that would not be plausibly to me a candidate to do that. So in other eyes, another way to say it, one size doesn't fit all. So that's what I think might have happened with this study. Don't know what y'all think.
I think you're spot on with that. And that's just a fact. I mean, if any of you know Jeff Tarrant and his Neuromeditation Institute, he's already been teaching about the effects in the brain on different styles of meditation. And it's not one size fits all. Every meditation isn't great for each person. It depends on what's happening in your brain. Same thing with pharmaceuticals, right? So it's cool to understand what's happening in your brain before you really try to dive into a certain type of meditation. And now we can do that with EEG, with how accessible it is. It's really fun that we can bring that to the mainstream meditators,
The same kind of meditation doesn't fit for everybody. And one of the early studies on meditation that I saw was actually from Erik Peper. And nobody thinks of Erik Peper as an EEG guy for some reason, because most of the time he's not. But way back in the early 70s, he did a study on concentrative meditation, and that they didn't have the usual expectation of the transcendental meditation of lots of alpha. And he found that they had 18 hertz beta. So, but beta with concentration, it sort of makes some sense. Anyway, it was picking a different style of meditation where you actually focus as opposed to transcend or unfocus. And so there's likely a different kind of meditation that's good for different people. If you got somebody who's kind of an overall alpha head, it's probably not a good thing to do transcendental kind of things, but perhaps teaching them to focus might come in handy. So different techniques that match the individual's needs as opposed to one size fits all. Which,
speaking of delta heads, Joshua Moore, I left the key underneath the rug. Come on in, man. He's from the outside knocking in. Therapy must be predictive of what they will do on their own, or it can just be a rumination or emotional enabling if do not work to replace the therapeutic process in the real world.
Really, throwing a bunch of therapeutic techniques randomly at a bunch of people doesn't actually create change always? It's not just about the tools you use, it's about how you go.
Do I sense some sarcasm here?
I'm a curmudgeonly, I've moved into curmudgeon land, so I'm just going to be sarcastic all the time. Yeah.
Dr. Marie, welcome.
Hello.
What country are you in? Are you in Canada?
Back in Canada. Yeah.
Are you going to watch the game Thursday,
Which game?
Hockey.
I'm not a big hockey. I'm not a fan of games that involve extreme head injury. Hockey and American football. I just can't do it. Sorry.
Because us Americans are going to whip you.
How rational is it if you're in a fight to take off your gloves and a helmet?
Yeah. I mean, there are always decent games between, Northern Europe, Canada, and the US. I mean, that no surprise, the lands of ice, right?
Well, one of the universities I attended was University of North Dakota in Grand Forks, which is a big hockey school. This is not Bison. This is they used to be the Fighting Sioux, but they dropped that. They're the Fighting Hawks for the last couple of years. So they changed their brand. Appropriately, the Fighting Sioux wasn't really a great image. Although I have to say that the university and the Native American population are interacting very well since the 1960s. The UND has a huge interaction with the Sioux, White Earth Indian Reservation, and others. So they do really well in that area, which is one of the reasons that fostered the name change. But as a university, they're a hockey school,
Mhm.
and they're far enough south. So for Canada, they're coming south for the winter to North Dakota, and
Right.
but they have a large contingent of Canadian hockey players that go to school there, and
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
been #1 hockey school for on and off over the last 30 years,
Yeah. Yeah.
repeatedly.
Are
Right.
hockey
Thank-
players still allowed to fight, like to hit each other? I don't know.
Oh my goodness, you didn't. Oh,
It
Now,
drives me crazy. I have to really speak as a Canadian here, but we had a choice in the 1980s, wherein we were really aware that the fighting was getting pretty extreme, and they could have changed the regulations to penalize the fights. And essentially, the audience doesn't want it. The audience wants blood, so it's another blood sport. So there you go.
Gladiator,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I would probably
So
be more
Canada,
interested.
Canada and the U.S. had a hockey meet within the last week or so.
Yeah.
And they played the national anthem for the United States and were booed roundly.
Yeah.
And in the first 9 minutes of the game, there were 3 down and out fist fights.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
the buttons are being pushed, and there's
Could I address his question? So Radar here has a question about what is the best meditation for productivity? And what I wanted to just preface this with, and feel free to answer this, the professionals here, but I have a friend who's working with a commercial EEG headset company that you guys would know. And one of the things they're trying to do is incorporate more of the EEG phenotypes before they teach you how to meditate. They're trying to match a meditation style to your traditional EEG phenotype, let's say. And I think that getting a scan to know something like that could be important before you go on a meditation journey. Just an idea, because I'll just say this. I have never met a workaholic, or I've never known one that didn't want to learn how to be even more focused and harder worker. And I'm just going to use that as an example. Maybe that's not what they need. Maybe they need a different type of meditation. I don't know what it is. But that to me is why maybe these biomarkers, neurotechnology, and meditation, we could have a closer relationship. And I do want to say, Jeff Tarrant's book does not do that. His book tells you, well, if you want to learn to focus more, do this. And if you want to be happier, do this. But it does not teach you about EEG phenotypes and then match them to it. And I'm hoping someone will do that. So that was a preface to his question. Feel free to comment.
I'm chomping on the bit to jump up here. Yes, 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 and yes, like 10,000 times yes. I mean, in terms of the people I work with, I just for facility, in terms of talking with clients, I just, I go kind of binary here, that there are 2 types of people on the planet. There are individuals who need quiet to quiet, and there are individuals who essentially need stimulation to quiet. So there are your natural meditators, or people who go for quiet walks on the beach, et cetera, yippee, they do their mindfulness, et cetera. And then there are individuals, they need to run too fast, ski too fast, drive too fast. I'm not going to endorse the drink a little too much, but there's that component as well, that people essentially need activities where the brain and the body become very aroused together in order to come down together. So here we're talking about our phenotypes, and bless the whole trend of mindfulness, etc., but it doesn't work for everybody. And there are certain markers, typically in the occipit, wherein it's torture to try and meditate. And I know a lot of folks talk about, well, you're just not trying hard enough, and practice makes perfect. And I cry, I don't want to say I cry BS, but close to it, that there are better ways to get into that and really, really help with the quieting. How does everybody else feel about that? I'm really...
I agree fully. Trying hard to relax is really not effective.
Yeah, relax now.
So, on top of your 10,000 yeses, I'll add one more. That's 10,001, I guess. So
there's really 2 questions there, right? There's one question about types of meditation, and then there's a question about productivity. And to answer the meditation question, I would say the one that you do. is the right one.
Yeah.
It's like exercise.
Mhm.
And, you know, meditation, mindfulness, to paraphrase, I think Jack Kornfield, is paying attention in a particular way to the present time on purpose. And then I would add, you know, replacing an evaluation with curiosity, perhaps, to really get into that sense of like unattached attention where you're focusing. But it's really an anchored executive function process. And meditation's not something that is a stilling process.
Yeah.
There's an anchored of executive function process. Later on, you become still. The same way you don't go to the gym and be strong, you go to the gym and be weak. And then later on, you have strength. So if you sit in the cushion and anchor your attention again and again and again, and it's frustrating each time because you wander off, great, you're meditating. Keep going. That actually is the point. Not try harder, but be unattached to the outcome. Anchor your attention particularly in a particular way. Keep going. It will work for all brains. I will argue that is a hill to die on, I think. Brains work this way. This is executive function.
We finally found one.
This is a core feature of executive function. This is not magical and mysterious. Meditation, mindfulness is a factor of how executive function tunes in natural day-to-day.
Andrew Hill identified the hill he would die on.
That's right. Now, the more important question might be, Radar, what's in the way of productivity? Because what's in the way of it will inform how you want to go after it. Is it procrastination, i.e. resistance? Is it about working memory and ability to hold your attention on something? Is it fatigue and sustaining the attention? Those would all suggest different meditation strategies. Is it because you're ruminating about the person who hurt you? Like, those are all different, styles of cognitive work you could do that would get yourself out of your way and let you make progress. But what's in the way of productivity? Because productivity is a big, giant, broad concept. Which resource is bottlenecking? That's what I would look at first.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying the show and want to help us keep it going, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support helps improve the content and brings on great guests and grow the show. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/NeuroNoodle. But hey, if supporting financially isn't in the cards right now, no worries. You can still help us out for free by liking, subscribing, and sharing this episode. It really makes a difference and helps more people find the show. If we've earned it, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode.
Looking at the other question, though, in terms of the friend who temporarily lost his mind from meditation, that's another big one. When I get on my soapbox on this show and the other in terms of like, make sure you work with people who know what they're doing. Some forms of meditation, the purpose is not to be one with the universe. The purpose is to essentially obliviate self. Okay. So, sometimes when individuals go on these retreats and they go very, very deep into certain forms of meditation, in fact, it can be very, very destabilizing when they supposedly reach the goal that they are nothing. It's not that you are one with something, it's that you are nothing. Good way to lose your mind indeed, unless you are with individuals who really, really know how to guide and know how to manage certain forms of what we would call in our profession abreaction.
Well, absorption states are dissociative states.
Yeah.
And if you get into the absorption style, the single point awareness, I think of meditation as divisible into the types of anchor, single point, present time, feeling tone, as 3 different classic styles. You can divide those up into other traditional divisions. But if you are doing concentration, absorption practices, single point awareness, Mahayana practices, you're packing your attention down narrowly, and those things are dissociative experiences that will create shifts in consciousness that are quite extreme. If you're already somebody who's easily dissociative and for whom that kind of journey is not safe or appropriate, don't do that. You don't meditate your way out of anxiety. And this is a place where people, I think, this is why I jumped on the idea that meditation is relaxation, because it's not useful as an intervention for stress. It's a healthy brain thing. It changes your brain over time, but you can't use it to stop a panic attack, or OCD. You wouldn't use it in that way as an acute intervention. Instead, it's a skill that you build over time.
How do you lose your mind?
Well, dissociative stuff.
Okay. So like when I go to the neighborhood tavern
break and Somebody who's
Well-
already probably on the edge of being psychotic or strongly dissociative goes and meditates strongly, you know, the same person would have lost their mind doing LSD or smoking too much weed. You know, it's just anything really intense would have pushed that person, honestly. And that's unfortunate, but it's also kind of like that'll be an obvious brain on a brain map that you can, you know, help stabilize. So
Right. And is it possible that people are attracted to a certain style of meditation that's just in their comfort zone rather than what's good for them? And
Sure.
if you're furthering what's in your comfort zone and you're, you know, creating additional neuroplasticity in the wrong direction, what's going to happen?
Yeah, I wanted to mention, I do think Jeff Tarrant's book did a good job of, it discusses the differing effects on the EEG from different forms of meditation. I'm sure many of them overlap with improved executive function, to Andrew's point, but I am kind of in the camp of, I think some of these are fairly distinct, and I think they could help people more. I even recall an interesting, Andrew Huberman did a podcast on meditation, and he actually said something I thought was interesting. We know that meditation can involve focus, or often does. He said that a person who focuses externally may become dissociated from their internal thoughts and feelings, whereas a person who focuses internally may become reassociated or maybe even too associated. And whether or not that model is true, those are the kinds of things that I think may be happening, and why I kind of think maybe people should read up on different styles at the very least before they choose one, or listen to people like you guys.
Radar says the friend described it as to feel like he was in a dream for 3 weeks.
Wow.
derealization. Yeah.
There's a study I just pulled up. It's a meta study of like 40 meditation studies, and it said these adverse reactions will happen in approximately 8% of people, 8 to 10%. So it's real. Most people probably won't have to worry about it, but yeah.
Also
Also, I think
self-limiting for most people. It doesn't create weeks of experiential disruption for most people. When it's adverse, it's a little disconcerting, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a true believer for people with very busy brains, if they want a quieting effect, just mantras, just slow repetition. So essentially you don't get into the derealization or depersonalization, you just quiet the chatter. Yeah. By the way, a little bit of humor here. Jay, are you trying to hypnotize us? Has anybody else noticed, the little pendulum that's going over your head back and forth?
What's
Back
going on? Oh, I see.
I have a clock back there, an old style clock that has hands that go around and the pendulum underneath it.
It's kind of humorous given what we're talking about.
No.
Well, you bring up hypnotism. Can you have somebody, cluck like a chicken and never come out of it? Is that what we're talking about here? Or, I mean, I'm trying to be funny, I guess, so we keep some people on. But what is going on with hypnotism versus this person that lost their mind here? Is that
we don't know what's happening in hypnosis. We don't know. It's a black box still. It doesn't operate the way that we think the brain operates.
What?
Derealization can end up being something that can be triggered off the anterior cingulate. The thalamocortical dysrhythmia at the anterior cingulate has derealization as one of its correlates. But then the anterior cingulate has got a lot of correlates. It's really reflective of it's limbic cortex, but it's thalamically innervated as well. So it's at a crossroads that most places don't get. The limbic system doesn't have a lot of cortical representation. Anterior cingulate and perihippocampu, those are cortical pyramidal layers that end up having limbic inputs. So, if you want to see derealization, look for a dysrhythmia at the anterior cingulate, which a thalamocortical dysrhythmia is a slowed thalamocortical column that ends up slowing down to the point where it turns off the lateral inhibition that keeps other things from invading. If an area of the brain isn't working, it doesn't have an input and isn't being turned on, the adjacent area will take over the function. It'll take over that turf. And that tonotopic shift can happen in auditory cortex when there's tinnitus, but thalamocortical dysrhythmia for pain is central, movement disorders premotor, but the anterior cingulate, again, that's reward deficiency. And reward deficiency is a very broad category: eating disorders, addictions, OCD, wide. Kenneth Blum probably has written more about the reward deficiency than most others associated with EEG.
So hypnotism is a real thing?
I didn't quite hear.
Hypnotism is a real thing. It's not a parlor trick. If we don't know what it is, how do we know what it's not? Like,
is that the trigger? Cluck, 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 cluck. No. Hypnotism is a real thing, but not for everybody. I mean, it's
okay.
Like anything else. There are people that don't really, go for the hypnosis stuff, but there are other people that will be hypnotized on the side when somebody's trying to hypnotize somebody else.
Okay.
You can lose sensation in a hand area, and before you prick the pin in it, you can tell whether they've actually lost the sensation or not by measuring the strength of the acupuncture points. They're electronegative, really hot spots. A couple of millimeters away, you lose about 200 microvolts of power, but they're right on them. That you get a real good, strong signal. And if the electronegative goes electropositive, there's no sensation in the hand. Whether it's induced by hypnotism, general anesthesia, brachial nerve block, unconsciousness, however you induce the lack of sensation of pain, you can predict it by measuring the acupuncture system. If you're not present, there's nothing there to perceive from. So
there's a stage hypnotist who got his PhD in the same lab I got mine in, but just before I did, a guy named Dr. Amir Raz. And one of the experiments he did blew my mind, and it outlines this idea we don't know what's happening in hypnosis. There's something called the Stroop effect or Stroop test, where you're supposed to name the color that a word is printed in, and what the word is a color name that doesn't match. So the word blue is printed in orange, the word red is printed in green, etc. And your job is to name the color, but the cognitive interference created by the automatic reading is executive function conflict, is cognitive conflict. Basically, it's a way of measuring executive function difficulties, and a very robust effect, been used for 50 years. Wow. Dr. Raz did an experiment on the Stroop effect where he hypnotized people into thinking the language they were looking at was Japanese, and none of them spoke Japanese. And the Stroop effect went away. And there was no cognitive conflict. They could name the colors, no problem. There's no lag, no increased cognitive load. And the problem with that is, as far as we know, the perception of words is almost pre-cognitive. It's happening around 50 milliseconds, 60 milliseconds in. And hypnosis is a post 300 millisecond cognitive adaptation, we think. Maybe it's like the mind on top of the brain. No, literally tuned the brain's ability to filter out information early in information processing, which confuses scientists because it doesn't make sense in terms of how the brain works or hypnosis. There's something we don't understand there.
The slow cortical potentials are not part of what they looked at in the brain, however. And the DC system in the brain is related to the DC system of the acupuncture points. It's a system that runs through you, and it's also in your head. It doesn't have neurological pathways that it follows. It's meridians. So, and that's fairly well developed. And I'm blocking on her name for the moment, but she's looked at the acupuncture system for a long time electrically, and she had seen some of the stuff I wrote early on about it, and Yeah. So she looked me up and then got me invited to do a talk at the meeting. So
Jay, get ready for this. There's a Chinese DSM. Anthony, what's that say?
Yeah, he just says that the Chinese DSM has a diagnosis for people that have meditated and had their ancestors talking to them. So there are some crazy DSM stories. One quick thing before we move on is I just want to mention there's a Penn State study I'm reading here, and this has been found several times, by the way. What it says is that frontal theta is the marker of hypnosis susceptibility. And I'll just read greater theta power in the more frontal areas of the cortex for the high susceptible participants. So
probably tonic theta as opposed to phasic, though.
that's what I don't know which one, the memory access one or the disordered one. Yeah. Oh, I think they pause it. It may be due to increased ability to relax. That's just something I want to throw in there. But
So maybe it's a crossover state, the ability to hit crossover, to hit a high theta relative to alpha or something.
Interesting.
Because that is the dissociative hypnagogic edge. It's part of what happens in hypnosis is going into that place, right? It's this. I'm not sure it's the same. It's definitely not the same as alpha theta. But as you start alpha theta, that's also where you'd start hypnosis. That's the moment. That's the shift. That's the state change. So it must be a crossover. I bet it's a theta surging past alpha, and that's what they picked up. Because they're going to be measuring during hypnosis, right? That's going to be an active state shift they're looking for in that study, I assume. So they're probably picking up alpha theta crossover. Yeah.
You can't hypnotize someone into doing something you don't want to do, but that's not true at all. That's PR from Big Hypnosis. There's a big
you know, it's not, but I've always been fascinated how stage hypnotists always know who to pick, right?
Yes.
In terms of what we came up before, the 20% it won't work on, 20% highly susceptible. Like, what are they eyeballing in the audience in terms of picking the individuals that are very susceptible? I don't know whether anybody has any theory on that. I just, I'm blank.
So Jay,
invite Erik Wilmart. Talk about big hypnosis. Erik's a real tall fellow. He's I think he's really high up in the hypnosis world at this point, maybe president or something like that of the hypnosis group here in the US. But inviting him on would be good.
Does he have a pocket watch?
No.
Amber, welcome to the party. Thank you for asking a question so I don't have to ask one. Are systems like NeurOptimal training only one way dangerous for clients trying to reduce attentional issues, considering conditions like ADHD can be varied, including the presentation of too much alpha? It depends. Who wants to take it from there?
The device is deliberately intended to not claim a medical treatment. If they were to make a claim, they would lose their status as a general health and wellness, and they'd have to apply through for a FDA clearance as a medical device. They're approved as a general health and wellness device, and if you're just generally interested in some experience, that's kind of the device that is intended for general looking at your experience of feedback, but it's not intended for treatment of any specific category, and it has generalized effects. Now, it has been used in studies, but never by the manufacturer, because the manufacturer would end up having FDA troubles if they were starting to use their device for a specific application. It's a general health and wellness device, not intended for that. They came out about average when compared to other devices when working with learning and attention stuff back in the 80s and 90s. But that was done by students. The manufacturer said, well, that doesn't mean anything because it was done by students. Well, look at most of the literature in our field has been done by students. I mean, the professors, you got to do the research to get your degrees. So most of our research is actually not coming from the head of the lab, it's coming from students. So dismissing it as work done by students.
Well, that's how it used to work. I'm not sure about going forward. I'm not sure any funding, any research, any grad students, any postdocs, any funding happens at all at this point. Research just shut down in the U.S.
Yeah,
Not to get
well,
political, but like
they just cut off the 15% overhead that goes along with grants that covers the institutional part of
yeah,
the grant.
I know people flooding out of academia, not going into grad school, leaving teaching jobs because of what's happening at their university level, getting letters saying, I'm sorry, your funding is no longer guaranteed. It's happening. It's regardless of what's being actually carried through, it's causing massive disruption in our, the freezing of cancer research in this country. Come on, really? Like it's anti-intellectual, and anyone who does neurofeedback should not be celebrating gutting of academia research in this country.
Yeah, the cutting of the
neurofeedback was
15%
Another hill I
overhead.
will die on.
Most of the universities in the United States right now are in financial trouble because of it.
Yeah, and all the universities in the red states are the ones going to hit the hardest because they don't have local government support for the universities. So they're going to have the largest educational deficit over the next few years. So
Harvard's got a gigantic foundational, corpus in their trust, but they're losing millions of dollars a day, and that can't be sustained. So, you're seeing a lot of layoffs and a lot of departments that are being shut down, and but that's academics. There's still trade schools out there for everybody, and that's a good living. I'm a tech. It's a trade, the
You're just special, Jay. You're just special.
Well,
I have
maybe
a
somebody,
question.
special, huh?
Yeah.
Dianne, help.
Yes, back to the systems that are out there and, being generally approved for health and wellness versus specific conditions. Does everybody generally agree that most neurofeedback systems are that way? It's for health and wellness versus specific conditions? Or do you think the majority of the equipment out there now is for treating specific conditions?
The
Do you have an
bulk of
opinion?
the equipment out there that's got a 510K is a medical device. Now, the FDA has cleared neurofeedback for relaxation, so they
Right.
can't really claim specific applications, but other people can. And if you go to Stress Therapy Solutions, which is a Brainmaster affiliated corporate entity, they don't have a totally interlocked directorate, so they're independent companies. The FDA regulates the manufacturer and their claims, not the claims from Stress Therapy Solutions. So, there are educational bodies that don't have the restriction from the FDA that make all sorts of application discussions. The clinical applications that are out there that have been well studied have lots of efficacy work that's been done on them. And there's always arguments as to whether there's a sufficient amount of evidence or not, but the meta-analyses in neurofeedback are needed because our studies are all small. You have a whole bunch of small studies, you can gather them together in a meta-analysis to have a larger N and actually make a statement at that point.
Will there ever be a larger study?
There doesn't really need to be. We've got good meta-analyses that end up showing good outcomes. And classical researchers who have studied ADD, ADHD, for instance, Sandra Liu, who worked with Barkley, and that she split with Barkley because she's a researcher and Barkley was a shill, for medication. And she's done the meta-analyses along with Martijn Arns and shown that medication and neurofeedback have equivalent power in ADD, ADHD. And so there are devices that are just general health and wellness devices, but you won't find them making claims unless they intend to be busted by the FDA. Sense AI is a general health and wellness headset. They make no claim about a specific application, but they actually test the impact by using an event-related potential device. But they can't call it an ERP because ERP is a medical test. So they call it a brain pulse. So they can take your brain pulse and tell you, and there's peaks that have specific meaning for novelty and error correction and things like that, and they give feedback on the impact of the training on your brain function measured with an ERP. So there's a lot of high tech stuff there, but there's no specific claim, and they do a lot of steps that you have to do before you get into more advanced stuff that could be potentially dangerous. And if you don't pass the initial levels, you can't get into the more potentially difficult areas of the software. So that Sense AI is one that's a general health and wellness device. But Brain Master's device is a medical device. Thought Technology doesn't have an EEG 19-channel amp, but their EEG devices are medical devices for feedback. Not
I'm going
general
to
health
hop
and wellness.
on the hill that I'm probably going to die on, which is, and people have heard me say this before, it bears repeating, that I think it's the individual wielding the equipment and their skill now that is becoming more evident that's more important. At our clinic, the Swingle clinic, we choose to use the medical devices, meaning Brain Master and Thought Technology. It's just a way of differentiating ourselves. That's one of the things that we choose. But the wellness space, I think, is getting bigger and bigger. And I dare say that individuals who know their EEG can wield these pieces of equipment well. But the catch, of course, are individuals who do not know their EEG, who lean on the devices. And I'm going to, loop back into the former question of, using a program that isn't well defined in, I think somebody mentioned play therapy, presumably working with children. And if you don't know what the device is doing or how to wield it correctly, you could get yourself in trouble. So I think it's as always, buyer beware. Please do your due diligence. And if somebody can't explain what they're doing and how they're doing it, be very, very wary of engaging with them.
Sounds like you need a neurofeedback association, perhaps referral services. Talibu, what's out there?
Yeah.
All of those companies have been at major meetings and advertised their wares. Val's kind of abandoned the traditional meetings because that's really not his marketplace.
Yeah.
But let's say you have a device that's a general health and wellness device that's FDA'd as a general health and wellness device, and you have a user group that applies it as a medical device for a specific application.
Yeah.
The FDA, when you apply, they take your word for it that it's a general health and wellness application. But if your user group doesn't use it that way, they can go to the user group. Now, if I make a scalpel and I say it's not really a medical device, I use it as a screwdriver, and they say, okay, it's a screwdriver, but then they see the user group using it as a scalpel, they can come back to me and said, remember when you said it was a screwdriver? All of your users are using it as a scalpel. It's a scalpel. You now have to go through the FDA registration for medical, which is why the corporations that do a general health and wellness scrupulously avoid any clinical application discussion. That they'll run from that because it can make it really expensive for them to go through a 510K.
Right. Even though many of them might be very similar to the ones that did jump through the FDA hoops, they have to be very careful about what they're saying they're applying it to. So my feeling as the answer to my question was that there are a lot of devices out there that just haven't gone through the FDA approval medical hoops to be applied to certain conditions, but they're just as effective for regulating the brain.
There are plenty of general health and wellness devices that are on the internet describing you should try this when somebody says they've got a specific complaint. Oh, you should try this, and that the FDA doesn't really track that. But if you've got a specific user group like a distributors and things like that that end up making claims, that can come back to bite you. It's something you have to be very closely aware of as a company. Joshua was setting up an experiment to test NeurOptimal for whether it tests like other devices or not. And at the time he was starting that, there was actually an offer of some funding or hardware or something from NeurOptimal. But as soon as word got out that there was actually a study being designed and going through IRB, there's no longer any funding and no devices available for it or anything. So that they knew that they had to step away from that. Otherwise, they could have gotten, FDA'd.
Trouble. Yeah.
FDA is a regulator, and as long as you got all the boxes checked, you're being regulated. And when they see something that's not right, if it's big enough to show up on their radar, they can go after it. Now, they've actually been at ISNR and APB meetings in the vendor area, wandering around, and you check their badge and their FDA. Now, you chat with them a little bit, and they say, "Oh, we're just checking. There's a lot of talk about this, DC stim and whatnot, and we're just looking. That these things are popping up on the radar, and at that point,
the other radar,
you get claimed. Now, the FDA did a cease and desist against a vendor because the vendor was making claims on their manufacturer's website, and now they have a separate school of neurotherapy to take care of the claims, and the manufacturing website is just kind of like Brainmasters. Show me the facts, ma'am, just the facts. These devices, this price, that's it. What do you use it for? Well, you can talk to people over somewhere else, and again, an affiliated educational body that doesn't have any FDA restrictions. So
that makes sense.
Joshua says he's finishing the IRB probably Friday, third round.
Well, third round. Let's see. How many rounds does it take? 13 rounds for a hangman's noose, So you're 3 in on the 13. So
all right.
But actually, going through the IRB is a great process. You end up having protections for your clients they're built in. All the interviews, the questionnaires, the surveys, what you're doing, everything is going to end up having to be approved for client protection. There was a group that wanted to study me because I have no pituitary, so there's no HPA axis. So they had ideas of testing the HPA axis for, intense stress things, basically torturing me to see what the effect was. And the IRB basically said, so it looks like you're going to torture this guy. They said, well, he's okay with that. And I was, they said, well, I don't care if he's okay with it. It's not okay with us. We're protecting the patient, even though the patient might not know any better, But then pain's not my thing. I've got, bad chronic pain. I ignore it quite effectively.
All right. We're getting towards the end here. None of us do lens, but what is lens neurofeedback? How is it different from normal neurofeedback?
Lens was designed by Len Oakes. And if you ask Len, how does it work? He'll go, I don't know. But it's a general health and wellness device, so he better not know. It's an extremely weak signal. It's so weak that the FDA approved that as a general health and wellness device because they thought it couldn't have any effect. The signal is so weak, you can't create an action potential like a TMS machine would. and this is kind of how DC stim and AC stim and those kind of things have kind of slid through without a great deal of FDA coverage. Just that they're generally relatively benign. But the FDA can come down real hard, real fast. All you have to do is pop up on their radar, and they'll sweep in.
The other radar.
The other radar.
Yeah, so
not
my
not
understanding of it. Yeah, my understanding of it is that it's meant to just kind of disrupt the current patterns in the brain, whereas traditional neurofeedback is really trying to retrain specific combinations of brainwave activity, where the lens system is just trying to disrupt it a little bit and allow the brain to try to find its new
a lot of people explain it in that way. I would suggest that the very, very weak signal that they have is enough to influence the way the brain has potential to fire. If you make a big bell, it will ring. If you take the big clanger and swing it and bang the bell, it will ring. But if you have a little padded mallet from the drummer and you go bonk on the bell, nada, But if you hit it at the right frequency, that bell will start ringing with that same padded mallet. So it's too weak to have an effect? No, it's too weak to have a direct, action potential effect. But you can potentiate the discharges based on the timing and location, and so that it's not too weak to change function. It's too weak to create an action potential, force the brain to do something right now. Again, you can shift the probabilities with it, but you can't create a change immediately with it.
Years and years ago, we used to use not the versions that are out now, but just the very simple stick, I dare say, to help with children with autism who had completely plateaued. Now, we also did find that we never did more than 3 in a row, and we had a wide berth of time between the sessions. And we did find, again, I'm going back years and years when Len first came up with this. Now, I'm not sure in terms of what's happening now. It's a little bit more indiscreet, and I know people are using it very, very regularly. So my personal jury is out on that. But back in the day when we used to use the little probes, we did find it helpful.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, everybody. Time.
If you're interested in lens, you should read Stephen Larson's book about it. He's written favorably of the effects of it and all of that. Stephen Larson's an interesting character in and of himself. Larson, E-N, Larson.
Link will be somewhere here. Mom on a mission, Dianne Kosto. How do we send people your way?
SymmetryNeuroPT.com or call 833-SYMMETRY.
How do you spell symmetry?
SYMMETRY, just like it sounds. Go to the website.
Food for thought. Jay Gunkelman, Suisun City. You said you got a new guest going to appear, and then also your Gunkelmentary. What do you got?
Yeah, we're giving copies of that out to anyone who attends as well. So, contacting my company, we used to have Brain Science International as the name, but people misspelled science so often we just Brain S International after that. So
like symmetry.
I'm gonna have to change my
Suisun Summit is a different thing than my company anyway, and it's not a commercial entity that makes profit. It gives anything that it makes to students. This last year we gathered up about $10,000 for student donations. So.
And we're getting ready to auction off that beard again, right, Jay?
Well, I didn't auction off last year, but this year we may have some people there with a deeper pocket.
Like Leigh Steinberg.
Yeah, he's listed as a philanthropist, and But we'll see. You know, I plunked down $2,000 to keep it, and if they can come up with more than that to shave it, then they get to shave it.
It's
Then they
the
figure out who
Samson
shaves
fund.
it. So
The
That's the
Samson
going
fund.
price. Dr. Marie Swingle, author of iMinds. Where do we send eyeballs?
Well, two sites. There's swingleclinic.com for on-site work and also swinglesonic.com for our app and our home treatment protocol.
And then Dr. Andrew Hill, 80% of your business is remote.
That's right.
How do I-
Work with us all over the world. Come check us out at peakbraininstitute.com. You can check me out at youtube.com/DRHILL for live streams and educational topics on neurofeedback.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying the show and want to help us keep it going, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support helps improve the content and brings on great guests and grow the show. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/NeuroNoodle. But hey, if supporting financially isn't in the cards right now, no worries. You can still help us out for free by liking, subscribing, and sharing this episode. It really makes a difference and helps more people find the show. If we've earned it, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. The NeuroNoodle Podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.
Hey everyone, here's a quick message from our good old buddy Joshua Moore at Alternative Behavioral Therapy.
I'm preparing to do an introduction to QEEG phenotypes. This is my first workshop on the topic, and this is just the introductory overview of the project. This is going to be very, very basic. So let's review each phenotype. We're just going to go through them one by one. If you look at the DSM-1, 2, or 3, and you look at the first chapter, it actually acknowledges that the DSM in mental health is just, quote, a descriptive adaptation, unquote. We're going to customize the interventions and tailor them to the individual's brain activity, not just applying the treatments or trainings to the individual's phenotype and maybe even their variants, but also customizing the protocols themselves to fit that person's individual unique frequency patterns. Maybe a dozen ways to have excessive energy in your nervous system, and then there's an infinite amount of ways to relate poorly to that excessive energy, which means that there is a lot of variations in what someone might call anxiety. And that doesn't mean that we're talking about the same thing when we're talking about anxiety. So complicated stuff. But when we look at a brain map, we get some basis in which we can start talking about what is this energy. Then we have to go to the client. We have to start talking to the client about what is your association to this specific kind of energy that I can see now. Then we get to care about things that insurance doesn't restrict us on. We get to care about like the person in a broader way. 85% improvement in mental health report following pairing a medication with a specific phenotype. You know, geez. Okay, have you seen 85% in any mental health studies for any medication? I'm going to be going over a whole bunch of different types of tests, assessments, and things that can be used that have things called neurocorrelates, which you saw some of those already. Better success outcomes. That's what we really want. We need better predictive power. We need better individualization. That's what we want.